Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Connecting Dots podcast. Ahsen has joined us today all the way from Vancouver, and he's a project manager in the construction industry. And let me tell you something about that city. As far as the natural beauty is concerned, that city, it's a piece out of heaven. Anyways, let's get back on track and talk to him as a project manager. How are you doing today, Ahsen?
I'm good, Osama. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for asking. So let's get started with this. What does your position entail as a project manager?
So, as a project manager, I'm basically working in the construction industry, and specifically in the construction industry, I'm working on residential and commercial projects. But the general idea of being a project manager is, since I'm working in general contracting, it's basically we have a client or a developer who will basically hire us to provide construction management services. And the project manager's role is to take the project from pre-construction phase, where you have 85 to 90% drawings, and then you would carry out the procurement and tendering process with your team. Then go to the execution phase, where you're actually building, and then finishing the job and delivering a final product. But the main focus of project manager is to control and monitor the budget and the costs, and monitor the schedule and the scope of the project. And yeah, so basically that's what are the three main: scope, cost, and schedule are the three main things that as a project manager you're managing and controlling throughout the process.
Interesting. So after you started in this position, what myths do you think have been busted for you?
So the way I started in construction, it's a I would say it's a funny story, because when I graduated from University of British Columbia as an electrical engineer, you don't expect somebody in my discipline to go into construction management. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's not very traditional. So I got
Right.
a lot of people said that you should stay in your field and do something that you've studied. Why are you going some completely different from what your education is?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for me, as an individual, personally, I always liked. I always wanted to work in an environment which was more people based, more collaborative. I didn't want to sit
Mm-hmm.
behind a computer and design. And so my first internship that I got was in construction management, and I really started enjoying it. And then I just decided to stick with it no matter what and see where this takes me.
Interesting. Well, it's
Um,
too bad, Essen, you can't work remote.
no, no, so there's no remote work. But the thing about this job, this position, construction management in general, it's that you can be an engineer, you can be a bachelor's, master's, PhD. None of that really matters. It's the way you get the work done is by maintaining and having really good relationships with clients, with consultants. And that was something that for me, was a learning thing that I'm still working on. And it was like, oh, I am a master student and I should just be able to figure this out. But no, it's basically how good of my relationship is with the sub trades and with the consultants, and that helps you get the work done. So for me, that was one of the biggest myths that were busted.
Right. And just out of my own curiosity, I want to ask you that as a project manager, uh, does this person get to be with the project from the very beginning? Like at the time, let's say there is a company A and then a company B, and a company A wants to do something for the company B, but then after everything has been negotiated, drafted, and planned, and when the project is started, is that the time when the project manager comes in to manage and maintain the progress, or do you guys like start from the very beginning, like from the ideation phase?
Traditionally, and On paper, a project manager is supposed to start immediately. So in the initiation phase. So as soon as there's the project charter where they have identified all the main stakeholders, and they have the baseline schedule and the budget has been allocated, the project manager starts immediately. But the way it works in mostly the way it works in our industry in construction is there is a full most companies have a pre-construction team. And what that pre-construction team does, they also have a pre-construction project manager. So that project manager would take the job from basically 0% to 75% drawings. And they would take it to the point where your permits have been submitted to the municipalities and you're just waiting to start construction. And then they would go on to the next project. Then you have a project manager and a team which is for construction. So that team would then come in and take over. And then that team takes it from construction all the way to final occupancy, basically close out. And then from there on, you have an operations team, which basically maintains the project throughout its lifetime. And that team takes over from there. So that's kind of the three phases, or the three, I would say, stages. And you have three different project managers. So there's a pre-construction project manager, there's a construction project manager, and then there's in construction and residential, they call it property managers that take over and they're maintaining the building and they're working with a team to look after the residents and so on. So that's kind of the format. I would say on bigger projects, because these projects, sorry, yeah, go ahead. So these projects, it really also depends. You're right. Sometimes you can get a project manager which goes throughout the whole stage, but it's usually for very smaller jobs. Most of the time, the jobs end up like 6, 7 years. So you can't have one guy going through the whole cycle. So you have it split into departments.
Okay, okay. So let's say when the cycle completes, and let's say a construction manager or the operations manager is assigned on the next project, what do you think is the best way for that individual to ramp up quickly on the project?
Going from one to another.
I mean, let's say if they're handling project X and that has been successfully delivered, and now there is a project Y, and they have to start preparing for that and get up to the pace of delivering stuff. So, what do you think is the best way to ramp themselves up in that regard?
That's a good question. Very good question. So as a I would say, as a newer junior project manager, who's this is my first project that I'm doing as a project manager myself. So what I've learned is, usually at the beginning of the construction phase, you have a lot of time to, because you're only mostly doing procurement and you're finalizing your scopes and so on. So what I've realized, and it's a lessons learned for me that I'm going to take to my next project, is the best way to be prepared for any project is to make sure that you take a good, you know, week or so to actually plan and make a full-blown project plan, where you have a stakeholder management plan, you have your change management plan, you have your communications plan, and then identify, who are your team members, what kind of training are they going to need to be successful, what they have a full organizational plan ready, who's going to be doing what responsibilities. So I would say the best thing to do in a job is, even though a lot of the times what happens is that you go from one job to another, and the other job you could mostly be, taking over from somebody where it's halfway and you don't have time. But I would say, regardless of time or no time, whatever stage you've gone in, make sure that you always have a project plan ready, where there's almost, I think, 10 key areas that you should have planned out. And it's very simple. It's not something that's very fancy. It's just an Excel sheet where you have a full plan laid out of who's doing what, how are you communicating with your stakeholders, how are you going to manage your changes, how are you going to manage your scope, cost, and schedule. So those things need to
Nice,
be
nice.
planned. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny that in university I've always underestimated Excel, that who has time for that. But honestly, now that I've started using it in my position as well, it makes your life so much easier. It's so much easier to track your own progress. It's so much easier to tell someone what's going on.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah, I
pretty
mean,
cool.
there are
Yeah.
different tools out there right now, which make it more
Yeah.
fun to plan. And but Excel is something that's very
Yeah.
basic and
It's a
can be
king.
used by anybody. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, in order for someone to be successful in the role of project manager, what kind of technical or soft skills should they have?
So to be successful as a project manager, so far what I've learned is technically, yes, you should have the basic knowledge of whatever industry you're working in. So rather it be software, construction, you should have a general overview sort of knowledge that you should have. You don't need to be super specialized or be super, you know, be a subject matter expert, for example. Because even in software, I know, I mean, as much as I've read, the project manager is more of a servant leader or a facilitator. He's not somebody who is going to be executing. He has a team who executes the work for him. He's more of a facilitator who makes sure that they have everything to do their job successfully. So similarly, same in construction. The project manager doesn't have to be a subject matter expert or should have like a master degree or a PhD or something. Or but I think the main thing again is having communication skills, really good communication skills, and having the ability to maintain very good working relationships. Because at the end of the day, you're, as a project manager and working in construction management and general contracting, you're not performing any work. You're not going out there to build something. You're making sure that your trades have all the information, the latest information they have to build. You're making sure that the client or the developer who's paying for the building, you're making sure that their costs are managed and monitored. You're making sure that you're on schedule. And so basically the only way you're going to successfully manage all these things is by having really good relationships with individual stakeholders. And that's how you get work out of people. For example, I'll give you a really easy example. So sometimes you're building on site and what is on the drawings doesn't work anymore. So, and it's an answer that the site needs 15 minutes. I need the answer right now. The only way you're going to get them the answer is if you have a really good relationship with the architect or the engineer. So you would literally pick up the phone and say, okay, this is not working. How can we solve this? And then if you have a good relationship with them, they would want to work with you and then help you out. If you don't have that good relationship, they'll tell you, okay, send out an RFI. It's going to take 5 days to
Hmm.
process. It's a very old school industry.
Yeah.
It's all based on trust.
Hmm.
It's all based on good relationship.
Nice. So, other than software, I would say that this industry seems like people are meeting each other in person, and somewhat it's some sort of having an extrovert trait in there. So, what would you comment about the art of negotiation?
Um, that's yeah. So yeah, that's a very good observation. So negotiation in this role is very very important, and it is a skill. It's a skill that you can that I'm learning. Most of my seniors, they talk very casually about it because for them it's become second nature. And it's very important. Like for example, it's basically the back and forth and the trading that you do between two individuals. So a lot of the times, something that I'm learning is when you, for example, if you have changes throughout the job and you're receiving changes to the scope, and trades or subcontractors are sending you change requests with and so on. So that at that point you're negotiating with them. Okay, well, if you do this now, then I can help you out later. Or in the early stages of the job where you are negotiating subcontracts, because their subcontracts are very standardized, and it's a specific format that a lot of companies use, and trades are like, okay, well, I don't like this term and I don't like that term. So at that time you're negotiating with them. Okay, let's modify it. How do you feel comfortable with it? um, so negotiation But for negotiation, one thing I've learned is you need to have things in your back pocket. You need to have something to give to get something. And the only way I think you can actually be successful at doing that is by having, you know, how I would say, well recorded information, or the way things are going on site. For example, if we talk about a small example, if I have my formwork trade or my concrete trade who did not perform their work in a certain amount of time, and instead of finishing their work in 1 hour, they took 2 hours. So for those things, you would record something like that, and then later on, when they come back at you for something else, which is a change request or
Hmm.
something, they're like, oh, this was an extra, this is going to be $2,000. And then you say, oh, hey,
Wow.
remember the time that you
Yeah.
didn't do this work in time, and then you spent 2 hours, and it cost us about $2,000 as well to make sure. And then they're like, oh, okay, so that's how you do your trading back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things. It's also based on your relationship, how good your relationship has been throughout the job, that you can actually do this back and
Hmm.
forth. If you don't have a good relationship, then
Okay.
it's just going to be
Yeah.
like, okay, here's a change order, pay
Yeah.
this, otherwise I'm not working.
Oh
So
wow.
it's
Okay.
very,
They're pretty
again, it's
upfront.
very, very,
Yeah.
very relationship based. But yeah, negotiation,
Yeah.
you are right. It's a very important, I would say, skill.
Yeah.
It's basically an art. It's basically an art.
Yeah. Yeah. True. True. Well, other than that, after becoming a project manager, how do you see the career hierarchy? Like, what's after this role?
Um, it's basically depends on individual to individual. But I mean, mostly when you become a PM, you're now in this role for you can be in a PM role for basically until you finish your career. There are stages of, like, going from an assistant project manager to a project manager, and then you can become a senior project manager, where you're managing multiple project managers. You could also work for a company where, from a senior project manager, you've now become a construction manager, where you're where you, it's the term that they use, I think, in software or in typical project management, is called portfolio manager, where you're actually managing multiple projects instead of one certain project. So you can go to construction manager. You can then go to being, director of construction, to vice president of construction. So there's no set hierarchy. It's really depends on the size of project you're working on, the size of company that you're with. A lot of the PMs who would work on a project, for example, which is $350 million, which was my last project. There was four project managers on that project, and they were looking after different parts of the project. So I was looking after commercial. There was another project manager who was looking after the residential. There was another project manager who was looking after just the mechanical and electrical part of the job. And then over these three project managers, there was a senior project manager. So it's really depends on the size of and the scale of the project that you're currently working on. Some jobs are close to 12 high rises or 12 towers, then you can have 12 project managers. But again, yeah, so there's no set path. But mostly what happens is, when you enter a role of a project manager, you pretty much you have to start and finish, at least I would say, 2 to 4 projects before you move into a senior project manager position. Or you kind of have to, like, it's more like experience based, um, you know, a promotion that you get. So, you finish like 4 projects and then you become a senior project manager. And even a senior project manager, you could be just managing one PM. It could be one of
Yeah,
those.
true,
But again, it
true.
depends if,
Yeah.
the scale of the job.
Right. So after becoming a project manager, how's the balance situation like?
Oh, it's very tough. Very tough. So for me, it's been it that I think that's been one of my biggest challenges is the work life balance after becoming a project manager. Because I remember when I was a project coordinator, and I um, was finishing one of the projects, and then my project manager had left, so they kind of force promoted me to become the project manager, and then I took the challenge on because I wanted to obviously grow in my role. And I thought when I finished that job as a project manager, I thought that was now I can do anything. That's how I felt. And I was like, oh, okay, because that building that I did was a very complicated, it was not a straight building, it had different angles, and it was architecturally very obscure. So once I finished that and the conditions I finished that, I thought, any other building I can do it in my sleep. That's how confident I was.
Nice.
But when I started as an actual project
Yeah.
manager in this role, and
Hmm.
even though the buildings that I'm doing are very simple, they're nothing complicated or
Mm.
out of the ordinary, but um, it takes a lot of time. Like it to
Yeah.
finish the amount of paperwork, to finish your actual
Hmm.
work. You could be spending 10 to 12 hours every day,
Wow.
um, 10 to 12
Wow.
hours every day, and
Mm.
you can just not work for just 8 hours. You won't be able to. You will just keep falling behind,
Yeah.
um, because
Yeah. True.
even construction management and project management in construction has become very agile as well. It's it's not like you have 100% drawings, you do your procurement, you execute, and you close. It's very stage based now. Sometimes you get drawings which are half, so you do your procurement based on just that half
Hmm.
set. Then your drawings become
Okay.
75%. Then you do your procurement to the
Yeah. Yeah.
75%. So it's very like
Yeah.
it's almost like it's I don't want to say it's an agile, um, because agile will be software where you're doing things in iteration and sprints, and you have a
Hmm.
backlog, product backlog. This
Correct.
construction
Yeah.
is more of a hybrid now. It's traditional
Hmm.
slash agile. So some part of it are very agile and very fluid,
Hmm.
where you're just getting the drawings and the requirements in a very iterative process, and
Hmm.
you're modifying your uh, management process accordingly. And some processes are very
Hmm.
traditional. But
Okay.
work life balance, on this one, especially with COVID, supply chain issues that we've had in the industry, where lead times to get
Hmm.
anything is now 6 to 8 months for everything. There's
Yeah.
shortages on material.
Hmm.
It's been a real challenge. It's been very tough. Having we had our first baby last year as well, so just becoming a dad and managing that, even though most of the work is done
Yeah.
by the mothers, there's still some pressure on dads as well to
Yeah.
spend time with their family, make sure they take
Yeah.
time away from work. And then obviously you want
Yeah.
time for
Yeah.
yourself as well, where you're like, okay, I need at least an hour or somewhere in the day where I can
Yeah.
just be
Me
me.
time.
Yeah. So it's
True.
it's tough, and it's really about how organized you are as an individual. But I would say at least you're spending 9 to 10 hours daily, sometimes
Yeah.
even working Saturdays.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyways, congratulations for that. That's a big, big next step of life, and wish you all the best with that. And I'm very sure that several years down the line, I think you'll be very thankful that you did take time out for your family, for your kid,
Yeah.
and then I think eventually things are going to fall into place. Well, changing gears a little bit, let's talk about a bit. Let's talk a bit about your educational background, since you've been
Mhm.
around several countries in the world. So, how has your educational career been?
I think I've been. It's been very exciting, and I'm very blessed in that sense to been able to get the opportunity to go and study abroad. Being in Pakistan, I finished my A levels in Pakistan, and then being financially able, that my parents were able to send me to England. So I went to England to do my bachelor's in electronics and communications, where I was focused. My main focus was power electronics, and so I graduated, finished my bachelor's in England in 2012, and then I went back to Pakistan to work for 2 years. And I worked with an engineering company in Pakistan where I was doing design for substations, infrastructure projects, so doing electrical design. And then just um, they weren't they were, I couldn't see a lot of growth back at home, and I wanted to move on, basically come to a country where I can actually get a nationality and get a second passport. So that's kind of was my thought process, and that's when I came to Canada, and then I did my master's at UBC in Vancouver. And then again, that master's was also in electrical and computer engineering. But during my master's, I kind of modified it and took some civil courses, took some project management courses after my first internship. Um, but yeah, and the overall experience was great. I mean, undergrad obviously is something that everybody is like the highlight of their life. You're younger, you have more energy, um, less priorities, I would say. So I definitely enjoyed that time a lot in England. When I came to Canada, I was more focused to what I wanted in life, and my priorities were very set. So even though I had a lot of fun here because Vancouver is beautiful, and the hikes and traveling, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, so I think and when I was doing my masters, I was more focused on, okay, I want to get my passport, I want to get a job, I want to start investing, I want to settle down. I was in more of that mindset.
Right, right. Makes sense. Anyways, considering the fast paced industry that you were a part of and a very high stake industry, I must say, how do you keep yourself up to date with the changing trends in the industry?
Um, so mostly I would say once I finished my master's program and I joined construction or construction management, I immediately started pursuing my engineering license. So when I started doing that, that allowed me to, you know, have a network of other professionals that are in the industry. So keeping in touch with them, I think, is one of uh, the biggest resource of staying up to date with what's happening. Just sitting with them having coffee, and sharing your experiences and what they're learning. So that's one of I would say, the biggest sources of keeping up to date, and generally just keeping up with articles and the general trends that are happening. General issues or problems that people are having uh, while they're executing these projects. Other than that, I think for my own professional development, I just make sure or try to have like a goal tracker for myself, where, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the certification I want to do this year. This is the certification I want to do in 5 years. So right now, as a project manager, I am studying and working towards my project management professional certification, PMP certification. where I'm sitting for an exam in the end of May. And even though these certifications it's not like once you get them, you're going to become a better project manager, but it's more of a validation to what you already are. So because the way you get the way you get the way you get a job, or the way you grow it in your industry, is by knowing people, is by having that network, um, a strong network, and maintaining those relationships. So that's how I think I have progressed as well, is by making sure that I've kept the relationships that I wanted to keep, and kept in contact with the people here. But the reason I'm doing these certifications is that once I leave, um, Canada or Vancouver, and I go to a new place where I don't know the people, then they can at least see, okay, well, this person has these certifications. It will validate my experience. So that's
Correct. Yeah.
that's that's
It
how
is going
I
to
that's
complement eventually. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's one way to that I think that you should keep uh, updated, or continue to grow and get more technical skills. It's not like software where I can learn a new
Right.
language, but
Yeah.
there's only so many.
Yeah.
Basically, these things, when you do these certification, they give you the tools to manage your job, and
Hmm.
then it's really up to you if you want to use them or not, and how you apply them. So when I was studying for my
Yeah. True.
PMP,
Mhm.
it's basically something that that you do, but it's written now in a book on how to do it.
Mhm.
But it's just a guideline. You don't have to
Yeah.
follow it, but it still gives you an
Yeah.
idea
True.
on tools and how to plan your
Yeah.
project at the very early stages. What are the right ways to do it? There's ethics involved in it, um,
Hmm.
but it definitely helps.
Interesting. Anyways, I want to ask you about your definition of success. What's the current one right now, and how, like, considering the fact that it changes with every phase in life. So, what is it for you right now, considering that you were established in your career, and second of all, you just became a parent, which is very profound.
Um, so when I was in university, when I was in I would say my undergrad, to me, success was all about um, mostly material things, having more money, having a nice car, having a big house and whatnot. So very typical definition of success was just material. But as I've grown older, and now that I have a family and a child, my definition is completely different. It's To me, um, success is having um, quality time with your family, your baby. To me, success is meeting your because I live very far away from my parents as well, and I only see them once a year. So for me, success is seeing them every year and spending time with them. Um, so my definition of success has changed a lot, and I think I always wanted. Um, I'm a very family oriented person, and I want to be around with my parents. I want to spend time with them. I want to keep in touch with my brother. So for me, success is basically family, and spending time with them, and with friends, having long lasting relationship with friends, having a support system. That for me is success. I mean, that's what personally I feel like, okay, I've achieved something in life. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
I'm still hungry, and I still want to keep growing in my career,
Yeah.
but my career is
Yeah.
almost, I wouldn't say it's now my second priority, but it's an equal priority. But family
Yeah.
and
There are
career
other
is like,
strong contenders as well now. Yeah.
exactly. So before I was married, before I had a
True.
kid, before my parents got older and older and they were so far away, for me success was money. But now
Yeah.
success has the criteria of success has changed a lot.
Yeah, that's very nice. That it's very fascinating. I would rather say that how this shift in our mindset occurs. Like it's all about cars, M3, M5,
Mhm.
Audi R8, whatnot, and then it
Yeah.
eventually changes altogether to different things. Anyways, moving on to a rather fun side of the conversation, Essen.
Okay.
What things excite you in life in general?
Constant change is something that excites me a lot. I cannot, stay in one place, do the same thing, meet with the same people all the time. I love changes.
Yeah, no, adaptability is a very essential trait, I believe, considering we all are engineers here. Anyways, since you're a very active person and you've done a lot of hiking, which one was your favorite hike?
Okay, so I used to be an active person. I've uh, not spent a lot of time on my own personal health for since COVID started, and I just with job responsibilities and family responsibilities, I'm guilty of not going to the gym or working out. But yeah, so in terms of staying active, advice to everybody who has a high stress job, something that I'm working on it as well. Please, guys, spend the time, on yourself and on your health, because stress can build up and you can burn out. So do whatever makes you happy. Go run, go work out, go on a long drive. So very, very important for, we don't realize it, but it's very important for our mental health. Um, but some of the really nice hikes that I've done in 2019, I would say, um, in my second year of marriage, I think, where me and my wife Zainab, we went on a couple of really nice hikes, very small ones, 1 hour hike. Lake Joffrey is a really good hike in close to Pemberton in Vancouver, and some of the really long ones, the longer ones I've done are close to almost 12 hours, where it's about 15 kilometers round trip, uh, 15 kilometers one way, and around
As an
1,500
honestly,
meters.
I'm just tired on hearing 15 hours.
It's not
Need to
bad.
get
It's not
active
as bad.
again.
It's 15 hours is it's not too bad. It's once you have to prep for a couple of months before the hiking season starts here in Vancouver, and that prep I mean just do a daily run, or you start using the stairmasters, or spend half an hour on cardio every week, every day. And but Lake Garibaldi and Panorama Ridge were the two um, I would say hikes that were just beautiful, that I'm planning to again do this year and get back into it.
Cool, cool. So tapping into your imagination, how do you think construction business is going to look like 30 years down the road, considering how fast the technology evolves?
So construction industry is changing a lot. I would say, did you say 30 years? 30 years, I don't know. I can't answer
Make it
that.
50, let's say.
I would say the next even 5 to 10 years, because construction waste is a huge problem. And sustainability is something that that we're going towards as globally. So what in construction, what they're doing is um, they're introducing these standards. There is the lead standard that they're now following, lead gold, lead silver. There's that they're following. There's passive house is another standard that they're building towards, and basically the idea behind these standards is that you're minimizing your energy loss, um, and it's basically using more efficient mechanical systems to generate cooling and heating, and less use of concrete. So you can see, if you start reading about it, that you're able to build high rises with wood and mass timber. So that's where the industry, like right now in at UBC, there is an 18-story building which is all wood. So you would think about it like an 18-story building with just wood, but it's again with concrete. There's so much waste, just from the manufacturing all the way to the disposal of it. It's
Hmm.
um, it's not sustainable,
Yeah.
and it's expensive as well.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. For sure. No, it's pretty cool and fascinating, honestly. So let's close it off by my last question. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I'm not that old, but
No,
what
considering the fact when you were in university.
um, I think the advice that would I give to my, I would say, younger self, maybe 10 years ago, would be to, I guess, stay humble. Because I realized when I look back, sometimes I look back, I think maybe I was too proud. Um, Maybe I had too much fire in myself, which is not a bad thing, but it can be a good thing as well. But stay humble. And the other thing that's really really important that I'm happy that I've always trust yourself, always. Because if I did not trust myself, and I constantly listen to what other people are thinking of me, or if I'm doing the right thing because other people are telling me that I'm not, and I should be doing something different, then I wouldn't be here. So I would say to anybody, whenever you're going into a career where you are going to be spending half of your life, your 12 hours of your day, you're going to be spending towards that. Make sure you do something that makes you happy or fulfills you. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good time. Because if you're going to be doing that for 35 years, that's a long time. You
Yeah.
want to do something that makes you happy, and
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're
Mm-hmm.
giving your life to it. So make
Mm-hmm.
sure you do something that makes you happy. If
Cool. Yeah.
people tell you otherwise, you know, just trust yourself.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, that is very, very nice to hear that. And with that, I really thank you so much for being here with me and having this conversation. And I hope our audience will draw some conclusive insights from our conversation as well. And for our audience, if you haven't subscribed already, do check out our channel for other videos. And this podcast is definitely going to be available on all major streaming platforms. And if you like the content, feel free to share it with your friends and family. And until the next episode, take care.